Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. In this video, we're going to look at Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone, depending on which side of the pond you're on, the film. Now, I already covered the book, so you can check out that video. I also did an entire introduction ranting and raving about Rowling and my views about that. In my book reviews, and I'll say this again, don't buy the books new. You're supporting Rowling. You can find them used. You can borrow them from your library. It's a better option because Rowling has issues. Lots and lots of issues. Again, I cover that in the intro. I'm not going to go into it here. But the films are a little bit different because she sold the rights. So she doesn't actually have, she had no control over the films, which is obvious the further you get in. They obviously consulted her because it was her works and she was still writing them. So they kind of needed to. Particularly if they wanted insights by writing scripts before she actually released the books. So they did work closely with her, but she had no legal or financial power because she had sold the rights. The only thing she did do, and I got this from a book called Harry a History by one of the former editors of a website called The Leaky Cauldron. But apparently she stipulated that when they bought the rights, they couldn't take her world and run with it, essentially. So if they were going to create other movies based off her world that weren't based off her books that were already published media, she had to be involved. So that's why if you look at the Fantastic Beast films, she typically has a script writing credit, and might be why they're bad, well, at least the second one. I've heard horror stories. It's very, very bad. It makes no sense because Rowling has issues and is a decent children's author, apparently horrible, pretty bland mystery writer. Has the assumption of taking men's names, despite the fact that everybody knows who the heck she is, and it's no longer relevant. Yeah, she has to have screenwriting credits, so she's not a good script writer. Apparently neither are the people of the Cursed Child, because that makes no sense either. But again, I'm not covering that either. One, she profits from that. I don't, probably because her name's on the script, even though I doubt she has anything to do with it besides, you know, she's a weirdo. She has issues. But we're going to cover the films. These are my copies. I have a full set, bought them like 4 years ago. This is a Blu-ray set of all 8 films. I got irritated because I like the extras, and there's not a lot of extras here. I like director's cuts and particularly director's commentaries. It would be a good interesting part of the films. So those are my copies. I have, again, most of, I think when it comes to Harry, you can't really find them individually. Again, I will actually link them just because, again, as opposed to the books, Rowling's not directly profiting from them because, again, she sold the rights. The only connection she has is these are based off, occasionally loosely based off, if you look at book 3, and that film adaptation, we'll get there, but they're based off her media. So if you haven't already read the books, you'll find the movies interesting. The books are better. They're always better. But you wouldn't, the only way you're supporting her is if you buy merchandise. Because again, she might have some of the merchandising rights. I'm not sure on that, but it's her notoriety, and she's using that for nefarious means, to say the least, including to hurt people and voice against people, basically against other people's rights. But again, I went through that. Let's move on to this film. Now, this is a good film on its own. I mean, it's a decent family film. There are worse things, there are better things, but as a whole, it's a decent family film. The CGI is not fantastic. It hasn't aged well, but neither has a lot of other films. The CGI, not an uncommon complaint. It's a very shortened version of the book. That's what I remember when I watched the film in theaters before I read the books. I rewatched them when I got my set here and realized, good God, this is abbreviated. And yeah, that's kind of the big thing to think about if you've read the books, is the first film is abbreviated a lot. It's a Cliff Notes version, essentially, of the book. And the book isn't very long for Rowling's books anyway. These things get huge, particularly if you watch the rest of my videos. I am covering everything and have actually already filmed all the books, and they're huge. Do I have any on me? No, there's nothing close by. So, hearing strange things, possibly cats. Yes, I have 4 cats. They're somewhere, thankfully not in here. Otherwise, they'd be causing problems because 3 of them are kittens. So, but again, back to the film. It's abbreviated. They change some stuff. They keep the core story. They just change a bunch of little details. The acting is pretty good. Radcliffe had already had professional acting credits. In fact, he worked with Maggie Smith, who plays Professor McGonagall, on David Copperfield. His dad's in the business, so his acting is good for a guy who I believe it's maybe his second acting credit in his long and very long career so far. He's done a lot of good stuff. He turned out to be a very, very fantastic actor. Neither Emma Watson nor Rupert Grant, who play Ron and Hermione, had ever acted before, so that kind of excuses them. They may have also particularly when it comes to children, sometimes blame the director. Though Chris Columbus is actually known for working with children. Please see Home Alone. Not necessarily the second one. It makes no sense, particularly when you look at it from an adult's roads. But he's known for family films. So he worked with Macaulay Culkin many, many years before, considering how much older that film is. So he's good at working with family films. But again, blame the director, particularly when you're dealing with kid actors, because these guys are teaching them and telling them what to do. So if you want a better synopsis than what I'm giving here, cut in here. Dominic Noble, he has a channel. He's a better YouTuber than I will ever be. He's been doing this for years. He covered the Harry Potter films and the books. He does a show called Lost in Adaptation that compares books to the films the films to the books they are based on. He is not happy with Rowling. He was a big fanboy before she went absolutely off the rails. But he still has those videos up. He does it a lot better than I do. Look at his other stuff. It's not necessarily always child friendly. He does cover some children's stuff. I think he does Ellen Enchanted, which is something I might cover here at some point. And some other stuff. He's very, very good. He's very, very thorough. Far more thorough than I'm going to be here. His Harry Potter-thon is entertaining. It's the thing that drew me to his channel years ago. But he does a lot of good stuff. If you want a better synopsis and comparison of what I'm talking about, check out his Harry Potter-thon. Check out his channel entirely. He's much better than I am. Again, he's been doing it for many, many years, and this is his job. But moving on. The adult actors are fantastic. You have amazing talent here. You have Alan Rickman. You have Maggie Smith. You have Warwick Davis, who, if you're not familiar with, he held an entire movie together at 18. That would be Willow. I may cover that here. I own it. It's kind of a family film, sort of. It's an old 80s fantasy film. But he's a fantastic actor. He plays the charms teacher. And then they screw up his character as it goes on. They lose out on a very, very good actor. Let's see. Who else is in this film? A lot of British actors. It all has to be British or Irish. Dumbledore is played decently. I know there are some complaints that he was still a very old man, and the actor dies after the second film, so there's a continuation issue here when you get to the later films. But there's many, many issues with the other films. They have issues, but let's cover this film. This film sticks to the story pretty well. As like I said, it's very, very abbreviated. They have some issues where they're bringing in lines from the book that don't quite fit what they're doing, including some of the I keep on the Forbidden Forest. I think I called it the Dark Forest in the book reviews. Oops, snafu on my part. But yeah, they have some centaur issues. The whole Norbert story arc, if you're familiar with the books with the dragon, is pretty much cut out. The dragon just disappears. Mind you, they cut out communications with Ron's brother Charlie entirely. So that's just, it's, I can understand it. It's streamlined, and the Norbert story arc doesn't do much besides slightly introduce Charlie Weasley and do a little bit of world building and show that Hagrid's crazy and obsessed with monsters, which kind of sets up, it's a little bit of setting up of other things. It's also to connect how Hagrid screwed up, because it's the Norbert story arc's purpose is to show that when drunk, Hagrid kind of gives up secrets. So he told the secret to dealing with the three-headed dog guarding the trapdoor with the Philosopher's Stone solely hidden behind it. So yeah, he screwed up there. Basically, it's music. Harp music will calm down a giant three-headed dog called Fluffy. So that's the point of the Norbert story arc. So it's kind of cut out, and I don't know if they just basically they use it for those lines of Hagrid sold information to some seedy guy in a bar for a dragon egg that goes nowhere, because the dragon is carried off and disappears. And then it's also used to get Harry and Ron in trouble because they're caught out of bed after delivering a dragon to friends of Charlie's who smuggle him back to Romania, which is where the Rowling decides to put dragons. I can kind of see that. I lived there for 2 years. Some of the dark mountains can get very, very dark, but it's an interesting place to put dragons. I don't know. I doubt Rowling's actually been to that country. I don't see it as a place she would go. It's very impoverished. It's very, very beautiful, though. Moving on. So that's kind of one of the other things they kind of mess up. I'm trying to think what else do they do besides, abbreviation. Things are a lot more expressed in this book, as in they use CGI and make things bigger. Neville gets bounced around after flying too high on his broom. Doesn't happen. He just falls off in the book. They just kind of do some stuff that doesn't make sense. Again, they make it far more goofy. Ron Weasley's character specifically, and this goes into the rest of the films, is far more of he's far goofier and not as intelligent as he is in the books. He's a very, very different character in the books. He's very loyal. He's very, very intelligent. Yes, he balances Harry out in his knowledge of the Wizarding world because he grew up in it. But again, he's still very intelligent. He's very, very brave. And that's one thing you don't really see as much in the films with Ron, is Ron's character is steadfast and very, very brave. Mind you, he's also fighting his own demons, which you don't really see. You don't really see his arc because he's the youngest of 7 brothers. I mean, one of them's, the oldest is the 2 oldest. One's dealing with dragons in Romania. The other one was a fantastic Quidditch player. I think so was his brother. That was Charlie. Bill's off working for Gringotts, breaking charms. Percy's highly intelligent, if Brown knows her. We deal with his story arc later. And the twins are absolutely, utterly hilarious and obviously very, very smart. If you something else they cut out, they make the twins goofy as well. So, and they cut out their kind of story arc and how really intelligent these guys are. So he's the youngest of all the brothers, and he has one little sister who's probably doted on like crazy by his mother because this is her only girl after 6 boys. So they make his character goofier. They give Hermione a lot of more of his lines and some of even his actions. You see that starting in this film. But again, they change the tone to make it more appealing to a wider audience, is my guess. So it's goofier. It wants to make the parents laugh because the parents are having to sit through this. I think it's hard for me to remember. I was 17 when I saw this. It was enjoyable. I ended up reading the books because my sister brought them home from the library and was hooked. So I talk about that a little bit more in my book review, but essentially I enjoyed the books because I was into that genre at the time. I'm still kind of into that genre. If I ever have time to read, I have a toddler. I don't have a lot of time to read. But I mean, it's a goofier film, and It does a decent amount of the world building, but again, the film is very, very, it's streamlined for a film audience, and also cuts out stuff they probably shouldn't have, because Rowling wasn't done writing the books yet, and possibly hadn't figured out, oh, by the way, this stuff is important further on. Maybe she didn't tell them, possible she didn't know. I'm leaning on they didn't know part for certain things. I know she knew Snape's story arc, which is cut out mostly in this film. It's something else they cut out. They cut out a lot. In order to fit it into the film time, or yeah, they make strange choices in this film. But I'm guessing Rowling, she knew Snape's story arc to an extent in his backstory, but I don't think she had finished fleshing out her world. She is not a good, consistent world builder, as opposed to someone like Tolkien, who was very, very good at world building, or even J.R.R. Martin, and their fantasy writer, who's good at world building. I think another author who's decent, though she writes much smaller books, is Patricia C. Reed or Tamora Pierce, who are two of my more favorite fantasy authors. And then Alison Croghan is another one. I will cover all of these books. Lots of books. I'm a huge fantasy fan. So I have lots of books to cover, all of which are mostly better than Rowling, who, again, I think she got crazy mad with power particularly after the films came out. So she knew these things were going to sell no matter what, so she almost seemed to stop giving a crap. And she didn't set things up, because she wasn't really, I hate to say that, she wasn't really struggling anymore. And she knew no matter what, these things were going to sell, because she'd gotten people hooked. So she gotten people hooked on either the films or the books, and no matter what, they were going to sell. It's similar to the various other film franchises. You get hooked, and a lot of them are crap afterwards. So, and that's essentially what happens with both the books and these films. Because the first one is, like I said, it's abbreviation, but it's good. I mean, it's a decent film. The further along it gets, particularly as they mess around with directors, things change too much. There's not a lot of consistency with characters, or with the world, or with the look of the films, or the tones of the films, even in comparison to the books. But again, that is going to be it for this review. Check out the rest of my stuff. I have a fussing baby. So thank you.